Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a very special guest. She's going to be sharing with us everything to do with communication, I think at a personal level and also at organization level. Welcome to the show, Joy Doreen Biira.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the invitation to your great show that I
Yeah,
believe is very impactful to your audiences. It's such an honor to be on the show today.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Maybe as just we start, I would like to know from you, like you can give us in a nutshell, what was your like career journey?
Thank you. So, for many people who know me today, know me
Mhm,
as a communicator, probably a media personality. But what people don't know is that I actually didn't go to journalism school. I
mhm,
was trained into the job. And I went to school or went to uni and studied Bachelor of Science Information Technology.
mhm.
And I think in my second year, I that's when I got an opportunity to work on TV as I was studying information technology. So I was trained into the job,
Ah.
and many years later, here I am identifying as a media personality with a bias to business journalism.
Mhm.
And also, I am a communicator who is currently the creatives director for Africa Speaks Limited.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because we mainly know you from your journalism route,
Yeah.
mainly see you on TV. And it's great to know that it was just like a path that found you as you were doing your main bachelor's degree. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you
Because when
talk
I was,
about,
I think, about
share with.
16, that's when I really started to find my passion. They keep saying, you can always find your passion no matter what age, blah, blah, blah. But I believe that when you are young enough to understand where your interests are, maybe
Hmm.
guided by mentors.
Hmm.
And mentors can be your parents, can be the people you look up to, your role models, or whoever. If they're
Hmm.
able to identify your strong points or your passion points and bring them out, it doesn't matter how young you are. I
Hmm.
think that is where that's a good place to start building a career. So if you have a child who is 16 years old and there's something that you see in them that you think they can actually grow up to become, it's a
Hmm.
good place to start. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think mentors play a very big part in helping us find who we are and what we are really good at. So currently you identify as a communication specialist or strategist. Yeah. So what does that involve?
So, strategic communication is just helping people to bring out their vision, helping them to understand that there's a role that we play in bringing out the visibility of an organization or a company, helping them to identify what strategies would best work for their organizations. I'd say
Okay.
today, if there's an organization that does not have a communication strategist, then there's something missing in that organization. So, a communication strategist is basically a professional who helps organizations develop and implement effective communication strategies, simply put. And this can include communication strategies, content creation, advisories on corporate communication, and also identifying possible partners to work with, liaison, and many others that do encompass the roles or the duties of a communication strategist.
Oh, that is interesting. So even the social media part is part of the communication. Thinking about
Yes.
advertising is also advertising and under communication.
Well, you could say that, but that is for
Mhm.
people who have specialized in communicating using advertising or advertisements. That
Okay.
is also a subsector of strategic communication because either way, whatever you're
Mhm.
advertising needs to communicate to the end user. And so,
Mhm.
yes, you could say advertising is also a part of communication.
Ah, good. And when you look back in terms of your career and what you have been able to do, what would you say you're really proud of?
Impact, Daniel, impact. If you're not able to impact anyone's life, I don't think you're doing anything right. You know, impact is about making people feel that what you do is associating with them, but also at the same time is making them feel like they are more aware than they were before. Impact is also about how much change you're able to cause in society, in a community, in a nation. It doesn't matter how, if it's even just one person whose life you're able to impact, that one person is good enough. If it's 1,000, well, very good. If it's 1,000,000 people, even better. But impact for me is what I think that my career has always been about.
Ah, okay, okay. And any particular instance of, like, say, this impact you're able to have either to a person, to a community, or even to a nation, as an example.
Right. So, as a journalist, one of our biggest roles is to inform, and to inform so the public is fully aware of what their rights are, fully aware of who they are as a people, and also fully aware of the things that they do not know as a society. So, if I'm going to look back into my career, which I would say is probably just in its early stages, or do I say mid stages? Because I've been doing this for maybe about for 12 years, over 12 years, let me put it that way, since 2008. So that's pretty much about, is it 13, 14, 15 years maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, and throughout, I could say that everything I have put my mind to, I have passionately done with a sole goal of having the audience in mind. What does the audience need? Who are they? How would they feel about this kind of story that I would do? How would they feel about the information that I would relay to them? Would they be impacted by it positively or negatively? So you have to think about all of those things. But if I'm going to be specific, I'd say in my career, I have tried to make sure that my job is also part of the society. So I remember in my early days, we started a campaign called 31 million Ugandans, 31 million trees. And it was about helping people plant trees after a certain part of Uganda had been affected by floods and mudslides. So we started a campaign to help people be aware of what it means when they deforest or when there's deforestation in the country, and what it means to plant trees and have that sort of impact. So this campaign happened to get the attention of the head of state at the time. And in some way, we believe that we managed to create impact across the country with this campaign. And the other part, I think, would have to be the stories that I've done as a business journalist. And
Yeah.
one of them happens to be a story about this young entrepreneur or social entrepreneur who started a campaign called Adopt a Family in Kibera. And
Mm-hmm.
he started this campaign to help feed the poor, or feed people who could not afford to provide food for themselves and their own economic development. And this was during the pandemic. So, if
Oh.
you've heard about Adopt a Family during the lockdown, you possibly would understand the story. So, this gentleman was helping to fundraise money from different people or well wishers across Kenya, and helping the people in Kibera as well put food on the table. So people
Right.
were sending money through an M-Pesa number. And through this M-Pesa fundraising, he was able to buy weekly meals for these families. So telling this story created so much impact that gave this gentleman recognition also by the nation, by the president during the pandemic, which was a really beautiful thing to see, that the stories we tell do have impact and can go global, can go national. And these are stories that sometimes we take for granted, but are stories that the world needs to know about.
That is quite impactful. I think, yeah, as you say, the stories you share have a much bigger impact. Rather, even sometimes the ones that you don't know, maybe you just did a story and you might not get that feedback, or someone comes and tell you that this one actually did this for me. But that is quite great. Now I want us to switch gears a little bit now to a personal level. I know we talked about communication, being a
Yeah.
communication strategist for an organization, but I also think communication is quite important at a personal level. How would you describe effective communication if someone was to communicate or to try to get to be an effective communicator? How would you describe?
Mhm. That's a good question. So, effective communication really begins with mutual respect. For instance, when
Mhm.
we started having a conversation about you having me on the show, I had
Right,
to think through, when am I going to be available? What kind of conversation are we going to have? When would you want to have this conversation? What time should we have this conversation? And it was a situation of mutual respect. I will be available on this date, and here are the questions that you sent me. So then I was able to commit. By committing, it actually means you're respecting someone's request, and that is effective communication. Had we come to today and I had said, yes, I'll be available, yes, I'll make time, and then the time comes and then I go blank,
yeah,
what would be your reaction? Your reaction would be, I don't think I can take this person seriously going forward.
right,
So, effective communication really is about mutual respect, and also having a good work culture, having interpersonal skills, skills
mhm,
that would help you advance in your career. And there's so many things that I think we need to consider when we are talking about effective communication. You
right,
cannot be an effective communicator if, one, you lack active listening skills. If
uh-huh,
somebody talks to you and you're not really listening, you would probably be the least respected person in a room, because one, you listen because you are internalizing what someone is saying. You want to respond after understanding, not responding from hearing. Hearing is different from listening. I
right,
can hear that your name is Daniel, but then I would not know what your second name is. I would not know that you are a coach, but I would
right,
know that, oh, that guy called Daniel. But when I
yeah,
take time to listen, I would know Daniel is a coach. This is what he does. He speaks to experts who have tips to pass on to other people, and, learning lessons. So because I've listened to what you've been telling me, then I'm able
right,
to know who exactly you are. So active listening is really important. And it's also important as an effective communicator to be assertive. When you're assertive, or being assertive is just pretty much the ability to state your opinion. You
right,
cannot always be a yes person. In every situation, when you're asked your opinion about something and maybe someone else has put out a different opinion, you just go with the flow and say, hey, I think, yeah, that person is right, or Joy is right. Joy cannot always be right. You have to stand for something. And that is one of the unique identifiers of a communicator. A communicator is the person who says, boss, I don't think you're right when you say that your target market are only the CEOs. What about the people at the bottom of the table? What
right,
are you thinking about them? So a communicator is that person who really, half the time, folds up their sleeves and tells it as it is, and then goes ahead to implement what they have come up with as an idea to help their boss or whoever it is they're communicating for understand that there's two sides to the coin. The other thing I think is a good communicator tells stories.
right,
If you're able to tell stories even in a minute, I think that would really be amazing as a communicator, because facts, figures, and piles of data, those are things that anyone can do, and they can do them in a PowerPoint presentation. They can do
mhm,
them when they're talking at an event. But how much more interesting would it sound if I came and I said, listen to me? The reason why we are having the high levels of teenage pregnancies is because there's one girl in Mombasa who dropped out of school at the age of 14 because her parents could not afford to take her to school. And because of that, we couldn't take care of her at home either. So, what other option did they have? They married her off into a family that they
yeah,
owed money. And through that, she was able to square out the date. So then now it gives the perspective of, so teenage pregnancy is actually this bad. Premature marriages are this bad. This is the effect they have on a family. So people start to think about all the other things that might come with it. You could probably sum this up as Aisha Juma's story that has been trending, the past couple of days. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, um, telling stories can come in different forms. But if you decide to say, listen, there are
Yeah.
1 million girls who got pregnant during the pandemic, yes, it will tell the story. But how deeper would it tell the story? So now, after I've relayed this information about this girl from the
Mhm.
coast who got pregnant or dropped out of school, got pregnant after being married off, then now
Mhm.
you bring in the figures and say, girl, this girl called Joy is one of a million pregnancies that happen every year in the coastal part of this country. Then now the story starts to make sense. So storytelling
Mhm.
should be the DNA of a communicator, because without it, if you have it, you want to persuade people to something, to tell them a story about how someone overcame a certain situation. So, also writing down your thoughts as a communicator, some of the things that you really need to keep in mind. But above all, what
Yeah.
kind of impact are you having with your communication? Impact is really the core of communication. A good communicator should be able to create impact, or at least get people talking.
Yeah, that is quite informative. I like the fact that you said, yeah, part of communicating is not just about talking, is about listening. And
Yeah,
they differentiated listening and hearing, two different things. And the storytelling
absolutely.
bit, I'm sure most people will be able to remember the story you have told us of the girl in Mombasa getting married off more. They will be able to remember that much quicker than maybe any other thing that you have said. And I really like that bit of storytelling. I think, is it last week I took an online course on LinkedIn about
Hmm.
using stories for selling, and it was quite impactful. I think storytelling can cut across anything, may it be sales, may it be even doing a presentation about something that might be very boring, or business
Yeah.
present with facts and figures. Stories can play a very big part.
Hmm.
Yeah. So just to move on, if someone is, now they have learned this is what effective communication is, how would you say effective communication can help someone to progress in their career?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say, if I
Hmm.
could pose a question to you, Daniel, what
Right.
do you think are some of the things that have helped you get to where you are, without really channeling them specifically to communication? What are some of those aspects that have helped get you to where you are today?
I would say number one, being consistent, knowing that I have a message to pass, and trying always to ensure that I stay consistent, like showing up every now and then. And at the same
Hmm.
time, learning from my own mistakes, knowing this one works, this one doesn't, doubling down on what works. Generally, I would pick those.
Right. So thanks a lot for that. So I would say it's the same thing with communicating professionals.
Hmm.
If you are a communicating professional, you have to have both hard skills and soft skills. One,
Hmm.
you have to do an assessment of what are the required skills for a communication expert or a communication strategist. If
Hmm.
it's about maybe editing skills, you need to find out, how are my editing skills today? What do I need to improve about them? Who are the best communication strategists in the industry today? What can
Hmm.
I learn from them? Those are some of the things you need to consider.
Right.
If there's a hard skill that you need, maybe it's Final Cut Pro, or it's, I don't know, which are the other editing software that
It's
we have
Premiere,
today,
Premiere
Adobe,
Pro, there's Adobe.
and
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many that you
Hmm.
can actually download or learn about. If you don't know them, find out from other people who are in your industry.
Hmm.
Get to know how these things work. If it's about social media, and which are the social media platforms that you need to be on, I mean, get on them and find out what impact you're able to have, what information you can source. So I would say one of the things that has really helped me throughout my career, that I would pass on to other people for effective communication. One,
Mhm.
um, get to know the hard skills and the soft skills. So we've talked about the hard skills, the kind of technologies you need to know, or editing software and things like that.
Yeah.
But then also there's the soft skills. Are you a good communicator verbally? We're not talking about the writing and everything. We're talking about
Yeah.
verbal communication. Are
Right.
you a good speaker? Are you able to explain yourself in detail without really struggling to express yourself? Those are some of the soft skills that you need to have. What are your interpersonal skills? How do you relate with other people, or how you relate with other people is able to determine whether or not you're going to succeed in your career. Two, I think that you need to build networks.
Right.
Without networks, I don't think you can communicate. And by building networks, this is what I mean. Let's say you've been given a role as a communicator, and your job is to reach out to as many people for an organization as possible. The first
Mhm.
thing you're going to do is look through maybe your phone contacts, or go through your database if you have one. I have
Mhm.
one. I have a database of like people in the business world. I have a database for people in the science world, a database for people in climate action, a database for pretty much everyone, the energy and renewable energy experts.
Right.
I have like a whole pool of them.
Mhm.
And I know at least one person in these different sectors personally.
Mhm.
It could be politicians, it could be business professionals, CEOs, whoever they are. I know at least one of them personally. I know that I can call one person and say, Daniel, I know that you're really good at coaching, and I would like for you to come and speak to my organization, or at least the team at my organization, about business coaching. So, of course, maybe the people in the company have been searching for a good coach and they failed to find one. But when they
Right.
hire me as a communication profession, or professional, one of my job, or part of my job, is to make sure that I know people in every sector. So, how easily you can get a hold of someone in your pool of networks is a very important skill that you need to have as a communicator. Three,
Mhm.
you need to have a thick skin as a communicator. When someone disagrees with your opinion,
Mhm.
how easily can you take it as positive criticism or negative criticism? In corporate communication, especially, you will find people who will half the time disagree with pretty much everything that you do or everything that you say. So, how you're able to convince them that there's the other side of the story is very key, because it's so easy for you to lose it and just say, you know what, I'm quitting this job. Let me look for something else to do. So
Right.
you need to be able to take in criticism positively and negatively, but also have a thick skin, because if you don't have a thick skin,
Yeah.
communication can be tough for you. The fifth thing, or maybe the fourth thing I would say, is as a good communicator, you should be able to listen to both sides of the story before you make a decision.
Uh-huh.
A decision about an employee, a decision about maybe a project that you want to do. You should
Mhm.
be able to also assess whether or not it's something that you're going to have to defend after it has been passed on to the public. If you're not able to defend your own decisions, if you're not able to defend a project,
Mhm.
how it comes in, then you need to think twice about what you're communicating. Even when you know you're communicating something that maybe is anti society, you need to have that defense point that you will stand by in the event that you're going to meet any sort of resistance. So it's very critical for you to stand by what you're standing by and defend it, be able to defend it when the time comes. I also think that the other part that many communication professionals do, they read extensively. They go back to school, they upgrade their skills. So if you're able to do that, please go ahead and do it. Upgrade your skills, go back to school, read extensively, travel the world and get to know how different industries work. The
Yeah.
communication industry in Kenya is different from the communication industry, say, in Rwanda, in South Africa, in Egypt, in the United Kingdom. We all function differently, and getting to understand how these different spaces work helps you to come back now and see how else you can compete at a global scale
Mhm.
locally. Like bringing that global mindset into a local execution of your role is
Mhm.
very key. And also vice versa. Get to know how differently the global market works and how the local market works. Sometimes what works globally doesn't
Mhm.
really work for the local market. So knowing when to pull out what cards to play is very important for communicators, and many other tips that I could share, but those are just, the main ones that I can think of right now.
Very interesting. You talked about reading widely, and
Yeah,
yeah, you can go back to school or you can still read books. So the next question is about books. Yeah, maybe you
yeah,
can share. I'm sure you also read books. What
I
book
do.
have you read, or maybe recently, or even in the past, that have has had a big impact for in your life and even in communication in general?
So I tell you what, Danielle, when I was like, I think 20 years old,
Uh huh.
20, yeah, I had just started my TV career. And I remember my employer
Yes.
calling me up because at that time I never took my job as seriously as I did maybe 9 months into it or a year into it. At the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, I felt like I was just doing it because I needed something to keep me busy as I get through university.
Uh
But
huh.
then one day he sat me down and said, "Listen, you actually have a skill that no one has. You have a talent that no one else has. You're
Mm-hmm.
not the best. We didn't pick you because you are the best of them all, but we picked you out because you have a skill and a talent that is so hard to find with the other people that we're looking for to do this job."
Mm-hmm.
So he gave me like a different number of things to do. He challenged me and told me, "I want you every day to read at least 10 pages of a book." And he
Mm-hmm.
even gave me a book and said, "Here, take this book and see what it does for you." So he gave me this book. I don't know if you're able to see it.
Yeah, I can see it. Even I can.
Richard
Or
Branson. It's Screw It, Let's Do It.
mm-hmm.
Lessons in Life and Business. And it was actually, it still is one of my favorite books because this book is about Richard Branson. I'm sure we all know who Richard Branson is. If we don't, please go and Google him.
Yeah.
He's one of the biggest business people we have in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
He's the owner of Virgin Atlantic and many other businesses. He owns some businesses here in Kenya as well. So go read about him. So this tiny little book, Daniel,
Mm-hmm.
when I read it, it talks about this young teenager
Mm-hmm.
who didn't complete college. He didn't finish school. So at the age of 16, I think he started selling newspapers. And then he said, "But if I'm selling these newspapers, why can't I make one? Why can't I produce one?"
Uh-huh.
So he started that a very long time ago. And if you read about like the different chapters, it has
Mm-hmm.
both personal and business skills. He talks about being bold. He talks about being assertive. He talks about really never taking some things too seriously. If one thing fails, you can always try another thing, never
Yeah.
giving up, challenging yourself, and standing on your feet, living in the moment, valuing your family and friends, and also, having respect, being innovative, being thinking young, but also being able to go out there and do as many things as you can while you still have the energy to do them. So this is one of my favorite books, and I read it back then, and it still has an impact on some of the decisions that I make. Because
Oh.
being bold in a society or in an industry like communication is
Mm-hmm.
very key. And I have learned through his book that being bold is one of the things that you need to get along in life anyway. If you're not bold with your life, with your decisions, then somewhere somehow you don't even have to look at it from a business perspective, even just from a personal perspective. If you're not bold with your life, I mean, it's just going to hang in the balance. You'll always be going with the wind. The wind
Mhm.
blows you to the left, you go to the left, it blows you to the right. The same way you go. It blows you backwards, you might never come back. So, yeah, that's one of the books. And then there's the other book that I don't know if you've read this book. Have you read this book?
Yes, yes, I've read that. Power
Power, right?
by
Yeah, Power
Robert
is
Greene.
the 48 Laws of Power. 48
Oh,
Laws of Power is a really, really great book that I would recommend to anyone, really, who, no matter the age. If you've never read it, it's a great book. It talks about never outshining your master, but it also really talks about the things that you need to know about life, the power of attraction, the power of making decisions boldly. It talks about so many things. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how
mhm,
to use enemies. I mean, it really just empowers you with a different mindset, for lack of
mhm,
a better way to put it, because we are all brought up differently. Some of us are brought up in such a way that we never ever see the negative side of life. By negative side of life, I mean that we always think everyone will always be good to us, but we
mhm,
forget that there are people who actually are brought up to make sure they make others fail. So, reading books gives you a different mindset on life and
mhm,
how different people deal with life challenges. It talks about, being never outshining the master. Like I said, it also talks about winning through your actions, never through argument. It sort of makes you into this sophisticated person, yet simply putting it that way. So you're simple, but you're sophisticated. So I really love to read books that have an impact on my life, like that get me out of my mindset and put me in a different mindset. The other book that I got, I think last year, is this book by my former HR manager at the Standard Group when I worked at KTN. This
okay,
is a book called Owning Your Career by Pauline Kirathe. Owning Your Career by
okay.
Pauline Kirathe. Yeah, she published this book, I think, in 2020 or 2021, around there.
Mhm,
And it's a great book. If you would like to get into the mind of a human resource professional, this is the book
mhm,
that I would recommend for you to read because it helps a lot with knowing what kind of skills you need to bring forward when you're applying for a job, when you're switching jobs, what are the things you need to know about, and also understanding yourself and your career. It talks
mhm,
about the skills to build a resilient career, the habits of building your career intentionally, but also it talks about when is it time to move on. So you've been doing this job and you're tired of it. When is it
mhm,
time for you to say, okay, enough, I'm moving on to the next thing? Or when is it time to actually start something of your own? Because sometimes we always tend to think that employment is the answer to everything. But have you thought that you probably have ideas that could make your employer your employee and vice versa? And vice
yeah,
versa. So, I mean, reading books for me is something that I love because it makes me more knowledgeable. It gives me wisdom to deal with life's shenanigans.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I think the book for Robert Greene I've read is Mastery. I've been
Robert
meaning.
Greene, right? And he has another one, by the way, on execution. If you haven't read it, you should try reading it as well.
I'll definitely do that.
Yeah.
So I find the reading, he's kind of writing a bit. Is it very academic or very complicated or some type?
Yeah, kind of.
Very
Yeah, when you put it that
identity.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like one way. He has a way of doing things that is a bit maybe conservative, but at the same time, we have a half of this world that is conservative, that
Yeah.
actually controls the world. If you look at all the wealthy people in this world, there's a
Mhm.
big percentage of them who are very conservative. So to be able to deal with them, you need some of these skills.
Ah, super, super. Thank you very much. I think we are coming now to the tail end. How can people get in touch with you? If they want, maybe they have had this conversation quite good, they want probably to get in touch with you, even to give you business in terms of communication strategy, or in any other way, how would you be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Right. So let me say, l- and I said it at the beginning when we had just started, I
Mhm.
am the communications director, or rather creatives director for Africa Speaks Limited, which is a strategic communications firm that works to transform communication and liaison for businesses and organizations across Africa and beyond. And we work with partner clients to strategically grow their visibility, impact in their respective fields and target markets.
Okay.
So, besides that, I'm a media personality and I have different platforms that I'm on. On Facebook, you can find me there, official Joy Doreen Bira. On Instagram, Joy Doreen Bira. On Twitter, Joy Doreen Bira. LinkedIn, the same. And which is the other one? Is there any other? Is there any other platform I've left out? Possibly YouTube, Bira
There's
Online.
LinkedIn.
You got to get me there. I
Okay.
am on TikTok, but hey,
Good, good.
TikTok. I'm also still trying to understand how I can tap into that market of TikTok. But yeah, I am on TikTok as well. The how do you get in touch with me? That's on those platforms. You can get in touch with me. I also do moderate events. I
Uh-huh.
moderate a show also called EdTech Monday. That is a MasterCard Foundation series of conversations about education technology and how
Hmm.
we can leverage education technology and transform the education systems across Africa. That's a show that airs on CNBC Africa, but it also has country editions, but are hosted that are hosted by different personalities. So that, among other things that I do.
Thank you, thank you. I really appreciate that.
All
Okay,
right.
great.
Is there anything that you think I have left out?
No, I think that is it. And
Yeah.
I'll cut this out. So I'll just say this. I realized, yes, we
Mhm.
it is still recording, but we happen
Okay.
to have some people who seem to have followed this through on YouTube. So I have
Oh,
no problem with the fact that the good part of it went on very well. But this last
okay.
part, I'll cut it out. I want to give a shout out to people who have been following us. I don't know how I forgot to disconnect on YouTube, but everything is still going on okay. So this will
Okay.
be an extra benefit for those people who are here with us live, because the
Sure.
video after this, I'm going to pull it down so that I can edit it. So if you have any questions, you can bring them up. Yeah. First of all, I can see. Hopefully, you can see that. Yeah, this is Grace Kariru. Kariru. Yeah, she's one of my followers, one of also of my students. She's saying
Yeah.
definitely an impactful impact by Madam Joy. It is so insightful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys,
Thank
you
you.
guys, you have a
Thanks,
chance to
Grace.
ask questions. I can pull the questions and then they can, you can be able to answer. I can see Monica here saying it is also. I will also look at that book, Power. Yeah, you recommended. Who is the author? I am
Yeah.
currently reading 21. Is it Indispensable Qualities by a Leader by John Maxwell? The author for Power,
Amazing.
8 Rules of Power. Yeah, it is Robert Greene. Yeah, let me
Robert
please.
Green.
Yes, Robert Greene.
Mm.
So Monica,
Yeah.
there you go. Then I can see here we had again Monica saying, I have since followed you, Joy Doreen. You are a genius. Oh, you have a
Hey,
follower here.
hey, hey, I'm a genius. What?
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, actually, she put the hashtag you're a genius. Hey, she's still here with us. How can I come up with a good communication strategy? That is Monica for you.
Right. So that's a good question, Monica. A good communication strategy is really about one, having the end person in mind. So, who are they? Who is the audience? What is the messaging that you want to pass across?
Hmm.
And also have in mind how simplistic is this message that you want to pass on. So, when you're coming up with a communication strategy, it's very important for you to have certain things in mind. Developing a communication strategy can be as brief as one page, but it can also be as wide as 100 pages, depending on what the messaging is about and the platforms that you'd want to use to communicate. I could get into. it in more detail, but I think maybe I would not have enough time. The key thing that you need to, or the three key things you need to understand and be sure about: the messaging. What's the message that you're trying to put across? Two, the audience. Who is the audience that you're targeting with the messaging that you've come up with? And three, where is this message going to be relayed? Is it going to be relayed on radio, on television, on print, or is it newspapers or any print material? And then also, we have social media platforms or digital platforms. So once you've identified where the platforms or what platforms you're going to use, or maybe you're going to do door-to-door awareness, whatever it is, have a clear mind about how you want to pass on this message. Because once you know the message that you want to put across, then you're able to identify, so who to whom is this message going to relate with the most. Then you say maybe it's the 18 to 25 year olds. Where do you find the 18 to 25-year-olds? Do you find them at school? Do you find them in their lecture rooms? Do you find them in their social spaces? Where do you best relate and communicate to them? So once you identify that, then now you're able to say, okay, fine. When do these university students go to school? Because you're not going to go and communicate your message when these students are on holiday. So it has to be during their semester time. And then what message do they most relate with? And then how do they consume information? This that you can't say that the same way a 40-year-old consumes information is the same way an 18-year-old consumes information. The 18-year-old will probably want something they can read in, like, I don't know, 3 to 120 seconds. And then the 40-year-old would want to read 2 paragraphs. So you need to have all of that somewhere on a piece of paper to guide you as you come up with your communication manual. So that's pretty much what a communication strategy is about. But in case you need more help, yeah, you know how to reach me. I'm
Yeah.
very active on LinkedIn personally. Facebook, I might use an admin here and there, but the message would still get to me. If you want to send me an email, birabusiness@gmail.com is my email address. You can drop me an email and I'll be able to help you out.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I'll actually put it. Is it Biira
Bira Business. That is if you want to send me a personal email.
mail?
Birabusiness@gmail.com.
Yeah, then they can be able to get in touch with you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate. Yeah, I know this was impromptu. We hadn't thought about it, but I'm actually thinking about it. I can be planning my interviews like that. We can have the first round just question and answer, and then we can allow people to come in. Yeah. So thank you very much. I want to end the recording. I can see Monica saying thank you very much, Joy, Doreen, Biira, 100%, and I can see Grace is there again. Okay, thank you. Let me end this broadcast. I really appreciate Monica for being with us, and also Grace and whoever accidentally bumped into this live broadcast. Thank you, thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much, Daniel, for having me. I wish we had more time for this because I feel like we had only scratched the surface of
You always
what
scratch
we
the
were meant to
surface.
talk about. But I understand, your time limitations. So thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate that.
Okay, okay. Let me first end the broadcast and then we can finish up our conversation.